Hello and welcome to Nikon Report, your weekly roundup of all the latest Nikon news and all other photographic announcements that we found interesting. Konstantin here.
This is Becky.
And we are here with breaking news. Whoop whoop.
It's like whoop whoop.
Whoop whoop. Nikon announced Z 40mm f2 lens in retro.
That's right. So the 40mm f2 special edition, as they call it, or SE, essentially mimics the same thing or same concept as the 28mm f2.8 that they released with the ZFC, where you get a special retro designed vintage look lens with all the same internal optics. It is a heritage design to match the ZFC. When I asked Nikon what the thinking was behind this one, they said they just wanted to have both of their pancake lenses, or muffin lenses as we call them, aligned with the ZFC brand image.
But Becky has a conspiracy theory. Please share it with us.
First, I'm going to say the release date is the 19th of January, 2023.
Okay.
It will be the first release of next year. It's going to weigh 170 grams, and the price at this point we know is going to be between about 300 and 350 pounds.
Okay, what's the 28 price in retro and non-retro?
So the normal 28mm is 259, and then the without any current offers or savings, as far as I remember, and the special edition is 309.
Okay, so I would assume it would be around the same because the 40mm was priced around the same. Well, you know, 40 is my jam, really. Yeah. So I'm a big fan of 40. I've got an F-mount wide lens, the F2 lens.
That's right.
Yeah, so, you know, for me, for Z mount, I'm actually contemplating right now because obviously the native Nikon Z is really expensive, but also wide lens just introduced 41.2.
They did.
You know, and I really need to try them out. I think for run and gun and as a budget option, Nikon native glass makes more sense. I really need to look into the rendering of the Voigtlander one, which I think just been released as well. It's in stock as far as I know. So
yes, it's just arrived.
I really need to look at it and see, can I justify the 1.2 rendering over F2 lens? So obviously we talk about 600mm lenses, 800, all those expensive 15,000 pounds, etc. lenses. But then on the other side of things, when people complain about expensive Nikon lenses, you have 28 and 40. And I personally think they're amazing.
They are great lenses and we get very good feedback on them as well. My conspiracy theory about this launch, and may or may not be accurate, and I could just be, you know, imagining things, but I wondered if this was sort of preemptive of a full frame ZF. Because although I understand it's nice to have the two pancake lenses as normal and then have both of them in a heritage design, it's like, okay, well, let's just complete the set sort of thing. It doesn't make a huge amount of sense unless there is something else that may come out. I could be completely wide of the mark, but I like the idea that potentially next year we might see a ZF.
Okay, I see what you mean. Because, yeah, if looking at the DX range, the 28 on ZFC is equivalent to 42. So 40mm is about 60, is not exactly the most popular focal distance. People would prefer to go for 35 to give them 50mm kind of standard equivalent, etc., etc. So from that point of view, yeah, I see what you mean. I think Nikon is getting their house in order. The house of Nikon.
The house of Nikon in order. That's my thought. Tell us what you think. We'd be very interested to know if you think that this might be preemptive of a ZF or whether it's just Nikon, you know, completing the special edition lineup, or what your thoughts are.
Well, since there are no news this week, let's talk about Nikon ZF. Let's speculate a little bit. What do you think, ZF? Do you think it's going to be basically a glorified Z5 or Z6? Or do you think they will experiment a little bit and would feel adventurous and introduce completely new spec?
I think the former rather than the latter, to be honest. Looking at the DF as an example, that took a beautiful sensor. It took the D4 sensor and put it in a DSLR body that had no video mode, but otherwise was very, very capable. Fine, you only got, I think, was it 4.5 frames per second or something? But that wasn't really an issue. It had that same amazing low light performance, etc. Now, the ZFC took the contents of the Z50 and put it in a retro body with a few extra perks, better autofocus system, hot charging. The ZF could be a Z6 II, I think, quite happily. I'd prefer if it was a Z7 II internally, but let's say it's a Z6 II. And again, let's take out the dual processor and just put maybe like a single very good processor in there. Obviously, it would have video, but I don't think that that would be a main feature of this camera.
I think when we're looking at the specs of these cameras, I know maybe it's not for everyone again, but you know, in my opinion, I can't care less on a camera like this about frames per second, about video performance. You know, I'm a big fan of Fujifilm X Pro series, which I think they've beautifully made. So Fuji just announced X-T5 as well, which is a kind of retro style camera. So I would like Nikon to follow that suite. I would take the handling and the controls on the camera over the specifications. Of course, as long as we have a good sensor with a good low light performance and a good image quality. The rest, for me personally, doesn't matter. However, obviously, if the price is high, then you better have good specs as well.
Yes, have to have the specs to back it up.
What do you think? So next year, yeah?
I think next year. I mean, maybe that's a little ambitious. You asked me why would they bring out a lens and not bring out the camera at the same time? And I think that's because they're not ready to yet. I don't think Nikon are ready to bring out a vintage style or a retro style full frame body when there's so many demands on their channels for so many other things.
That's true.
So potentially once we've seen, say it's a Z8 and maybe a Z6 III, Z7 III or whatever. Once we've had a few of the other cameras updated, then I think it would be time to bring out a ZF.
Okay, and it will be a crowd pleaser because looking at the reaction on ZFC, you know, we're going to put our beanies on, fake mustaches, going to have a beautiful latte art in the shape of the camera.
That's right.
So, you know, in terms of this, I think, yeah, definitely, we need this camera, even if it is at the moment not on the roadmap.
That's right.
All right, tell us what you think about ZF. Do you think you will pay £1 billion for it? Do you think you'll get one yourself, or do you think you'll stick to your F3? All right, moving on. A quick break from Nikon news, but the exclusive Nikon dealer, Grace Osminster, just got a Retailer of the Year award by British Photographic Industry News.
This is the 4th year in a row that we've won this award. Thank you so much, everybody who voted for us. We very much appreciate all of your votes and your support of our little camera shop.
Yeah, that's true, because what you see is two-faced over here, but there's a lot more behind that. Those chaps and chapesses that are in a store speaking to you, helping you with all your technical questions, they do a lot of work and they remain unseen. So it's a nice validation for them that they're doing a great job.
Indeed.
All right, let's move on to aftermath of Z600 announcements. There was a little thing called MC-N10, but I think 600 was kind of the main meal of the day. So we've got a bunch of videos talking about the lens, and the first one up is by Ricci, who actually visited us last week on Friday. We had a great live stream, which lasted almost 2 hours. So if you haven't seen that, definitely check this out. He also had a hands-on on this lens with Morten Hilmer himself. As all Ricci's videos, they're packed with details, full of information. So it is probably, in my opinion, the ultimate video on 600 to watch.
There you go. We also have a video from Steve Perry from Backcountry Gallery. Steve makes fantastic videos on wildlife photography, and he's done a first look field review of this lens. He's also included some images and some sample shots on his blog, which is backcountrygallery.com. So go and check that out. I mean, if you ever have any questions about the autofocus system on your Z cameras or on your DSLRs, then Steve Perry is a man to follow and pay attention to.
Fantastic. And if you haven't seen the comparisons with the F-mount version yet, then Nikon Rumours got you covered. So head on to the link below and check out the comparison with the previous version. For me, the most important was the weight, and it's almost 600 grams difference. And coming from F-mount to Z-mount, you will appreciate that for sure.
Moving on to the MC-N10, we did have a little bit of coverage on that. So Thom Hogan included on his Z System user blog an article about the MC-N10. He said you can use the MC-N10 with the Z6 II and Z7 II as well. There was a question about this on our live stream last week, in fact. One difference between the Z9 and the Mark II models is what you can customize some buttons to. For instance, Function 1 and Function 2 buttons can be programmed to high-res zoom on a Z9, but not a 6.2 or 7.2. So the good news is that the MC-N10 is compatible. If you're not a Z9 user, it's not the end of the world. If you use a Z6 II like we do for video production, then it's a tool that you can take advantage of. You just have to bear in mind you can't function and customize the same things.
But at the same time, I think that's a firmware update, and I think we probably will see at some point some support for Z6 and Z7 third generation cameras, as well as probably some DX offering from Nikon as well. What my only concern about this particular release is it's powered by 2 AA batteries, but it has to be connected via USB-C cable to the camera. So I personally think that it would be nice to have a Bluetooth wireless connection option as well, because a lot of the things do nowadays.
Yeah.
So it would be nice to have a Bluetooth connection, so at least you wouldn't be wired to all other things. Because again, if you have it on a gimbal or something like this, then you really have to set it up the way that it's all, without all the wires hanging, etc., etc.
Exactly. Now, Nikon did release several tutorials on the MC-N10, so anyone who is curious about it can have a look at the link in the description box or the podcast notes. But some things that they've included are recommended setup when using the MC-N10 with a tripod, shoulder rig, or gimbal, the part names and connections with camera, and recommended custom settings for video recording that make the MC-N10 even more useful.
That's right. And we also include a bunch of YouTube videos from Nikon USA to Kai himself as well. So have a look at that as well. Now, let's talk about different things. Since there's not much news this week, let's talk about Nikon third-party mount licensing.
Yes.
So obviously we have 2 players in the game now. Well, actually 3 if we put Viltrox in the place as well. So you got Voigtlander and Thom, right? Mm-hmm. According to Thom Hogan's article, and he was great on spitting out the rumors on Z9 Mark II recently. Now he also talks about new manufacturers trying to license a Nikon Z mount. What does he say, Becky?
So he says it's clear that Nikon is following Sony's lead and licensing the Z mount to others. Just how far that goes and how much information is being shared by Nikon is unclear. But Cosina, Voigtlander, and Tamron have both posted tiny footnotes on their offerings that specifically says they've officially licensed the mount and information on it. And it appears in China that Viltrox may have too, or at least has Nikon China's endorsement, giving their executives promoting Viltrox lenses. I've now heard from multiple sources that at least 2 other well-known companies have explicitly asked for Z-mount licenses. Only one is who you might guess.
All right, so I assume that is Sigma.
Yeah.
Right? So what is the second one? Let's guess. Let's put the bets on. I mean, the only one I think of is Zeiss, which makes sense because Casino owns Zeiss.
Would be wonderful.
And then they already have a Voigtlander lenses in place. So that could be quite an easy thing to do.
Yes.
What else do you think?
True.
Imagine Zeiss Altus lenses.
That makes me feel very excited.
Yeah, that would be quite cool.
That would be very cool indeed. I'm trying to think who else might do it, because is it going to be one of the Chinese manufacturers like Laowa or something like that?
Well, he said big ones.
Yeah.
So Chinese manufacturers, they're getting bigger and bigger. And, we're looking at Laowas, we're looking at Viltrox. We can see that they're now a lot more recognizable than they used to be about, let's say, even a year ago.
Yeah.
But if you think about Japanese manufacturers, I mean, Takina explicitly said they're not interested in that, while they actually still have lenses for Nikon F mount. They just avoiding that.
Yeah.
Unless they're being naughty and they're not telling us something, who else can it be?
I don't know. I can't think who it would be, but if you know or you have an idea of who might be this secret company who've applied for a license, then do drop it in the comments box. We'll probably see your comment going, of course,
That's the one,
that's
definitely.
The one.
Let's speculate together.
So,
moving on to other things. Nikon Support updated their troubleshoot checklist article on their website. It basically goes through all the steps on troubleshooting any Nikon product. So if you have an issue with your camera or lens or perhaps an accessory, that probably would be an interesting article for you.
Now on to some Nikon Corporation news. The Nikon Vertical Movie Award for 2023 is calling for entries. This is exactly what you think it is. It is a vertical movie, a video award held to support video creators who are challenging vertical video, which has the potential to become a new standard due to the increasing demand because people are too lazy to turn their phones horizontally.
That's true. But what I've noticed recently, that a lot of content for big brands is nowadays being shot with gimbal and mirrorless camera attached. So it's not going to be shot on iPhone.
No.
So if you shoot, especially fashion brands, so they're obviously doing still photography, they also shoot video. And there are 2 types of video they do. They do video, obviously, in a normal way for advertisement, but they also do lots of social media, which is effectively vertical. So it makes sense for a lot of people now, for a lot of commercial photographers nowadays, maybe not for us general enthusiasts, because it just feels like too much work to shoot, to shoot a story with a mirrorless camera like this. But you never know. The good news is whoever wins the first place will get Nikon Z9, the 24-72.8 setup, and also a prize money of 500,000 yen.
Not too shabby. Now, the theme of this year's event, which will be held for the second time, is light/light. The results of the final screenings are scheduled to be announced at CP Plus 2023, which will be held from Thursday, the 23rd of February.
Very nice. Then we're going to move from Japan to Japan. And we're going to tell you about Japan Bird Festival 2022, which is the biggest event of its kind in Japan. And it's been held couple of days ago, last weekend, effectively. And apparently it's been held since 2001, but for the last 2 years, because of the coronavirus, they had to postpone those. So it's a big gathering of those people. And Nikon was there showcasing their Z9, Z7 Mark II cameras, lots of lone lenses as well. And the binoculars, the Monarch M5, it's an interesting thing. They just launched them in Japan, but they've been launched in USA, in UK for quite some time.
Yeah, we've had them for a while, the M5 binoculars, actually.
That's true. But in Japan, they've just announced the release of them.
Wow. So the Japan Bird Festival, if it hadn't already been held, I would have been like, we should go. That's the kind of thing. You'd love that. We should go.
It's not a flower festival, Becky.
Birds.
We should have a free pass to Chelsea Flower Show.
We should. Next up, Nikon Corporation announces a new ultra compact smart camera, the Lufact A2000.
Not a stupid one.
It's not a Coolpix, as you may have gathered from the name. Now, the Lufact series of cameras, they're actually industrial cameras.
Exactly.
And these were born from Nikon's unique image processing technology accumulated over its long history. They're like little boxes.
Yeah. What they do, they attach it to the production line, so they can actually monitor things. And if you see the Lufact H080, that's the bit that actually looks at the things, but then you have to attach the power adapter to it, and then it will be connected somewhere else.
Wow.
But they designed to be small and compact and monitor those production things. And we talked about them, I think, about 4 or 5 months ago. So it seems like there's a new camera in the pipeline. All right. Then more corporate news.
Wow.
For you, Becky.
Thanks.
Nikon has continued to buy back their own shares. So they've been doing it for the last 4 or 5 months. So I'm going to give you an update on the totals to date. So basically, 10,651,000 shares has been bought since then, and it's equivalent of 16,119,000,000 yen. That sounds like a lot of money.
It does sound like a lot.
Do you think this amount of money can get you 600 mil lens?
I should hope so for that amount.
Maybe a couple.
Maybe a house to house all my camera collection in.
All right. Let's move on to some third-party news. More your favorite news, Becky.
I love it.
SEPA numbers again.
Woo, woo. So we have SEPA numbers.
Yeah, we haven't talked about them for like 3 months.
I've managed to get out of it.
Exactly. What we recommend you for those monthly updates, definitely go to Nikon Rumours website, and there's a user called ZoetMB who actually compiles all these data. So look at that, it's more detailed. But we're just going to go through basically the totals. We're not going to go too deep in that. But what I can tell you that if you look at the year to date compared to the last year, the DSLR unit shipments were down 19%. Mirrorless has gone up 24%. Compact cameras declined 35%. So let's talk about this. So it seems to me that it's very logical. Mirrorless goes up, everything else goes down. So DSLRs obviously have been selling less and less. Compact cameras have been pretty much disappearing. So it's pretty much a logical trajectory if you think about this.
Yes.
Now, if you look at the lens sales, they kind of more or less the same. So 35 millimeter lenses are up 9%, and then DX lenses, or let's say lower than full frame lenses, are down 4%. So again, not a big difference there. I don't see certain parts in there. So I think it's just to do with the camera releases more than anything else.
Yes, very much so. So we also have the cumulative mirrorless unit share, which was 67.8% and is up by almost 10%, actually.
Yeah. So effectively, mirrorless sell less. And if you look at the actual shipped value, so therefore money being made in mirrorless, it's 84.9% compared to 77% last year. So there's a lot more money to be made in mirrorless system because it seems like it's something that people spend money on more compared to, let's say, DSLRs or compact cameras. All right, now let's look at geographic share. So let's start with DSLRs. So DSLRs are selling the most in Europe again, so 39.2%. Then in the United States at 33.1%, not a big difference there. And then if you combine China, Japan, and the rest of Asia, you're looking at about 25% there. So again, Europeans tend to buy their cameras. I mean, we discussed this on live stream, and there could be certain financial factors to it, or maybe just the different buying habits in Europe compared to the rest of the world. You never know. But let's move on to mirrorless side of things.
Yeah. When it comes to mirrorless, Asia actually has 47% of the market, whereas Europe is 26% and the Americas is 23%.
Wow, that's incredible. So effectively, Asia takes almost
half.
Almost half of it, because if you combine Europe and the United States, you're looking at exactly 49.1%. You know, that's incredible. So it seems like, China as well as Japan and the rest of Asia is a huge market for Nikon and the other companies as well. Looking at lenses, Asia again is winning this market at almost 37%, followed by Europe at 31%, and then Americas at 27.5%. Very interesting statistics. Do what you will with this, but it's an interesting thing. Next time we'll revisit CIPA sales, probably sometime in January once we get the full year results.
Oh, I'm so looking forward to that.
It's going to be a live stream, 1 hour long, me crunching the numbers with a big calculator.
If you've got like a big PowerPoint presentation or a board, and then you can point to things, it's not so bad. Yeah, okay. Excellent. Moving on to your weekend read and watch segment, we do highly recommend that you watch our live stream from Friday. It was a full 90-minute live stream with Ricci from Nikon. He had lots to say about new releases, about what he's been up to, answered people's questions about settings, about the new firmware updates. You name it, we talked about it. We always love having him on the show, and much fun was had by all. So go and join in if you can.
Absolutely. And if you didn't have enough of us, then go and look at our hands-on with a small rig Magic Phase. It's automated focus puller system for all mirrorless cameras, including Nikon. But what we did to take it to another level, to turn it up to 11 effectively, we put a Nikon 58mm Noct 0.95 lens on it. And it's a big, heavy lens. And what we wanted to say is actually we will drive this lens. It definitely will drive all the smaller ones. Yeah. But this thing can actually drive 58 0.5 lens as well. So have a look at this. We will have a review of 58 Noct lens at some point soon as well.
Imminently. So watch this space.
Stay tuned.
As a final note, the Nikon winter instant savings have started in the UK and Europe, and there are massive savings. We are getting a lot of demand for a lot of equipment that we both have in and is on back order. So do place your orders nice and early to make sure you are not disappointed, because you don't want to be buying, dare I say it, Christmas presents and then not have them arrive on time. So I can just only urge you to go to our website and check out those deals.
What a brilliant advice, Becky.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for joining us this week.
Yes, thank you very much for watching and or listening. Please give us a like and a subscribe if you're on YouTube. Give us a follow, a rating, perhaps a review if you're listening on a podcast platform.
Exactly. We're available in high definition on all podcast platforms that you can imagine, but mainly Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, you name it. So follow us there in 320 kilobits per second.
That's right. And if you'd like to see some pictures, the occasional review image that we've thrown up on the internet, then actually we're on Instagram, aren't we?
Absolutely. I just published X Pro 3 review, so that's really good for Nikon podcast, isn't it? So Becky, where are you at?
So I'm at Rebecca_Danese on Instagram.
The shop is at Nikon and Grace, and I'm at Konstantin Kochkin. And we will see you next week.
Thank
Goodbye.
You. Bye-bye.